right, welcome back, everybody. So we are down to getting through the last session that I'm going to be talking with you and at you about. We're going to get into legislative advocacy, which may be the main reason that a lot of you joined today. And I'm happy to talk with you on this subject. And the first message that I want you to hear from me is that your story can impact change. When I talk with legislators all the time, what they really say is that the stories that they hear from real people affected by the bills that they're considering are the number one thing that moves them to go ahead and make a change. Okay. So stories alone can be impactful. So if you're not at the stage yet where you have data points, that's okay. You can sometimes be the one that's really just sharing a story because you've got a whole slew of people from Colorado who are going to be there with you, and other people can touch on the data points. And our stories matter, not only in terms of trying to get one bill passed or two bills passed, but they matter because they are establishing relationships. When you're at the legislature, I want you to keep in mind it's not about just getting a bill passed this session. It is about developing relationships with the legislators that will carry you across the course of time to help you get things done. Okay. Because you don't always get everything perfect in one session. In fact, you never get everything perfect in one session, right? So, seated next to me in this picture is Joe Bocum, the gentleman there with the tie on. He's the first senator that we dealt with when we were trying to get Iowa's commitment law improved. While we were there as citizens, before I became a lobbyist, he introduced us and helped us develop relationships as we shared our story with multiple other legislators in both the Senate and the House. Okay. From that came the ability to get to more people. They got me a meeting with Kelly Garcia, who is the woman seated here in the green shirt. She was our incoming new director of Health and Human Services in the winter of 2020. And I wanted to meet with her to try to get Iowa to apply for the IMD 1115 waiver. Okay, that was the purpose of the meeting. You can see my computer there. I gave her a short little talk explaining who I was, our son's story, and a little bit of the history of the mental health crisis and why I wanted the waiver and how it could help Iowa. That meeting never would have happened if I didn't already have relationships developed with these legislators. They're your pathway to get to other people in the system that can be really helpful. So as you're advocating, think about it in the long run, the long game. And I also want you to hear that you do not have to be an expert to advocate. None of us, when we first get started, are experts. I would venture to say I'm still not an expert. There's always more to learn. And yet, you want to do your homework, right? And all of you that are here today are starting with your homework. You're starting by coming and learning some of the language of SMI advocacy and some of the policies that you need to be thinking about that you might want to work on. But you also want to learn about the session. You want to learn about how your own legislature works. And you're very fortunate that Robin and Judy are going to be here today to help you with that piece of things for Colorado. You can learn a lot of this by going online and looking at various things that are on the legislative website too, if one of you are from another state. Okay. You want to learn the language of policy action to understand what does it mean when, they are getting a bill through a committee, what happens next. You want to try to start learning some of that type of information. So I'm going to talk to you about how a bill becomes a law. Robin and Kate sent you a wonderful video about how it happens in Colorado. But since there's people from other states, I'm going to cover this very briefly. I will tell you, since I track legislation in 50 states, it varies a lot state to state. But the basic element is here that a legislator introduces a bill. In that same chamber, it gets assigned to a committee. If the committee chair decides that they want to give it a hearing and move it forward, they give it a hearing, they hear testimony, they vote on it, and if it passes, then it goes to the floor of that chamber. And if it passes there, then it gets shifted to the other chamber and it gets assigned to a committee. And if the chair of that committee decides they're going to give it a hearing to give it a chance of moving forward, they give it a hearing, people testify, they vote. If it passes, it moves to the floor of that chamber. If it's amended in any way, it has to go back to the first house. And then if they concur, then it can go on to the governor. If it wasn't amended, it can simply move to the governor, and then the governor can choose to either veto it, ignore it, and in Colorado, if the governor just ignores it after a certain number of days, it becomes law. That's a really great thing. Um, or they can sign it and it goes into law. When it becomes effective varies a lot. So don't worry about this thing about January 1 of the next year. That varies all over the place. But that's the general thing. So it's not like you go and you testify, and if it gets through that committee, it's all good. There's many stages that it goes through and chances for people to either kill it or block it or amend it in ways that you don't know about. So it's a little complicated. When you go and you're meeting with legislators, it helps to do your homework about who they are so you know who you're talking to. You can look that up on most legislative websites and find who they are, and it might tell you what committees they serve on, what bills they've sponsored in the past. Sometimes it'll show you what their normal day to day profession is, their day job. If it's not there, sometimes they'll have a link to their own website, or you can just simply Google them and look them up. It can sometimes take time, but it's worth figuring out, okay, where is something that I know and I can connect with this person about, right? And be able to kind of plead to that aspect of their personality that ties to the bill that you're talking with them. It helps to know who they are. Are they a Democrat? Are they Republican? Mental health advocacy is not partisan, and I urge you to stay away from partisan things in your legislature if you want to make headway on your mental health advocacy. I have to especially do that because in Iowa, all three chambers are controlled by Republicans. So believe you me, I stay away from all the dicey things and I focus in my lane. And I'm respected for that. I can go and speak to some bills knowing that I'm looking at it just from the mental health lens. So it's important to kind of do that. This is a picture of Joel Fry. He is a representative who's recently retired, but for years he was in charge of our HHS appropriations. He was a mental health counselor, but he did it from a faith-based organization and mostly for people with just anxiety and depression. It took me a while to figure out how to connect with him and get him to understand SMI issues, but I did. And he gradually came along and became a good friend and would text and ask for information on the backside as they were considering various bills. It took a few years to get that to happen. Because you're a big group, you're going to want to get organized. You're going to want to talk about who knows whom and map your connections. Certain ones of you are going to want to talk to certain legislators. And Kate, I know, is going to get organized around this. A simple way that you might think about doing this is by having a Google Doc or something where people can say, hey, I talked to so and so. Here's what I learned. Or it could be that you have a meeting on a regular basis and you're sharing information like once a week or once every 2 weeks. You guys will figure that out, but it helps if you're communicating with each other so you all know what's going on and you can be strategic in what you choose to do and how you spend your time. You also want to think about building coalitions not only within your group, but also with the other people there at the Capitol. You may have other lobbyists who want to come and advocate on your bills. Here's a picture of me with Denise, who is in charge of the social worker organization at our Capitol, the woman in the red shirt. When I was first advocating and lobbying somebody that was very much an amateur, not knowing everything yet, she taught me a lot, right? They sometimes will come and take you under their wing and teach you and show you tricks. Go and observe them. Watch them give testimony. How do they do that? What resonates? Watch how they respond to the people that have testified before them against a bill that they're working for. How do they quickly, agilely respond to that and counterpoint some of the arguments? You can learn more as you go along by watching lots of things. And I believe that Kate and Robin are going to organize a day for you guys to go and do some of this, observe a committee hearing, just so you can see how those logistics work and listen to how things operate. It's really helpful. You can also learn from them and share intel about bills and what's really happening behind the scenes. That takes a little bit more time, but that's something to be thinking about. Okay, for all of you, there's a lot of different advocacy options. You can simply be sending emails in support of bills saying, dear, Senator so and so, here's a bill. I'm really hoping for some support on da da da. You can also work on scheduling meetings with legislators. You could do that there at the Capitol. You might ask for a virtual meeting. Many legislators are happy now to meet via Zoom. You could even ask to meet with them when they're back in district if you live a long way from the Capitol. You can provide written testimony on bills for hearings, and you can provide oral testimony for hearings. And I believe in Colorado, you can do that in person or virtual. It's great that you have options. Robin's going to talk to that a little bit more specifically. If you are sending emails, I urge you not to ever send a mass email. Legislators will not read them. Sometimes they won't even open them. So copy and paste becomes your friend. If you're trying to email a whole bunch of legislators that are all in the same committee where your bill sits, copy and paste the meat of your content, right? But be sure that your greeting matches your email address. You want to make sure they feel like they're being individually emailed. Brevity is appreciated. They don't have all day to read a really lengthy diatribe. Make it short. Writing to see if you will please support bill da 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 da. Give them the link to the bill if you've got it. A brief reason why. Think in terms of the story data ask. Thank you very much for considering voting for this bill that can help to save lives, whatever it might be. Brief. For meetings with legislators, I highly recommend to email ahead of time to request a meeting. Now, legislators move fast, or legislatures move fast. They don't always know what their schedule is going to be next week until Monday or Tuesday or even that morning. So, what they might write you back is say, "Thank you so much for letting me know you're coming. I don't know my schedule yet, but email or touch base with me in the morning and we'll figure out a time," right? That goes over better than showing up and expecting that they're going to meet with you. It's just a heads up, polite thing to do. Have a handout. If you can, a one pager that has your name, your phone number, your email address, the bills you're supporting, the bills you're opposing, if you have those, one shot stop. I have a one pager, usually by end of session is front and back, right? Because there's a lot of bills. When you're with them, uh, ask them how much time they have and try to respect that. Thank them for the meeting and try to take a picture. Okay. Get a picture taken, and I'll tell you why. Because then you can send it to them in a follow up thank you email. And if you're okay with it, give them permission to use that picture on their social media, in their legislative newsletters. They like to show their constituents that they're meeting on issues that matter to their constituents. Okay. It's a technique that really will help to, again, form that relationship. You can be posting about it and thanking them as well on social media to say, "Thank you for meeting with me about this bill, blah, blah, blah." Follow-up emails are a place where you can answer any questions they might have asked you that you didn't know the answer to and you had to look up or check with somebody else, or provide additional information. Sending a thank you email, it will separate you from the pack because most people don't bother. It helps with that relationship building. Okay, for providing testimony, written testimony, you want it to be fairly short, direct. You can sometimes attach a fact sheet. I'll let Robin address if you can sometimes give an attachment. And you want to indicate in that written testimony if you're for the bill or against the bill. You want to state it very clearly. And in fact, many times they'll have a little checkoff on some of the legislative websites for that. If you are testifying online virtually via Zoom, it helps to know the rules, figure out if you have to sign up for that. Try to think about having your time frame be a little bit shorter than what they say. So if they say it's going to be 3 minutes, try to get it yourself down to about 2 minutes and 45 seconds. So you're giving yourself a little cushion, okay? That will help cover a coughing fit, or if you get a little bit tongue-tied and you have to repeat something, a little cushion will let you slow down and be more effective in what you have to say. In-person testimony, I recommend that you try to memorize at least one part or line of your testimony so you're not just reading it with your head down. You want to be looking up and making eye contact. If I actually am writing something up to testify, I'm going to put it in big font so that I'm not struggling to read it. And I'm trying to maintain eye contact and having practiced it enough that I can do it mostly with just periodic look downs, right? Again, you want to be able to speak slowly so they can take it in and understand it. Okay. Opening of live testimony, you want to introduce yourself very simply. I'm Leslie Carpenter with Iowa Mental Health Advocacy, and I advocate for people with severe mental illnesses, right? Short, sweet, to the point. Don't waste time with saying, thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Senator so and so. All that, that's giving up your chance to talk, and you don't want to do that. A lot of people will do that, but I encourage you not to. Eliminate extra words like for the record. Try to have it be that you can get through it easily and not trip over not knowing someone's name. Okay. You're going to see me standing here in our legislature. We have subcommittee meetings. That's our opportunity to be able to testify. And sometimes they're in this house lounge where we're literally standing in a semicircle around a table with our three legislators on the subcommittee. I try to place myself after people that I know might be opposing the bill. And I do that because that way I can listen to what they have to say and respond to it and counterpoint what they had to say. That's advanced. You won't necessarily all want to be doing that or worrying about it, but there's some strategy or strategy around how you get yourself signed up and do this. It comes with time and practice. Try to start and end with your position on the bill so it's very clear if you're for or against it. Think about what part of your story relates to that bill. Try to connect on a human level by sharing those details. Avoid timelines. You don't need to tell your whole loved one's story, okay? The meaning of it will get lost. Use simple language. Lawmakers do not know SMI jargon. So, again, translating it into words that they can understand helps. And practice and time yourself. Practicing something that you've written up, you'll find that sometimes the words don't come out of your mouth well and you'll want to rewrite it. Sometimes you'll tighten it up and it helps you to kind of get better at getting through the testimony. At the end, you want to end strong. Please pass this legislation so we can move forward with developing a complete system with AOT or whatever it might be. Thank you, and I'm open to questions. Thank you, and I'm open to questions. I highly recommend you go ahead and put that in there because it sometimes will buy you extra time and let you share other points about the bill that a legislator might be able to ask you about. That's a wonderful save if you're having a really restricted period of time in which to testify. They will not always take you up on it, but sometimes they will, and that's a really helpful thing. If you have also submitted written comments, you can mention that, and many of times they will go back and look at that. And then if you're afraid of getting those questions, maybe think about practicing answering and asking and answering questions with each other. Make a plan. I encourage you to go visit the Capitol once before a day when you really have to go and be there and at a certain time. It lets you get the lay of the land. You figure out your parking, locate the meeting room, find the restrooms, figure out, do they have a cafeteria? Are you going to need to bring food with you? Water. I always have a bottle of water with me. It's always dehydrating in our Capitol. Bring a sweater. And in between, take care of each other. It's really emotionally draining to go and give testimony on these issues. And you might feel really alone. You guys won't because you got so many of you that are going to go and do this, but be there for each other and kind of support each other. All right, back to the point about building relationships. So back in that slide before at the beginning where I showed you that I was meeting with Kelly Garcia, our Director of Health and Human Services, I did not win. She did not agree to have Iowa apply for the IMD waiver because of the various other complexities of the waivers that they're currently using. Okay. I didn't win, but I had to accept that loss with grace, right? We will not win everything we venture out to do. Okay. It's just the nature of how this works. But if you can accept those losses with grace, other things will come along and you'll have better opportunity for future progress. Because of the way that I interacted, she saw me testifying on a lot of different bills. She knew that I would be able to be okay being the lead-off speaker on the day that they brought a legislative tour. They brought all the legislators to our state hospital in Independence, and she asked me to give a talk where I shared a little bit more of my son's story, the mental health crisis and the history of it, what brought us here, a bit about our AOT program. You can see I'm showing the video about anosognosia there. And I shared state level policy solutions, solutions that I knew could be helpful. From that meeting and the discussions that ensued through the day, we had 4 bills the following session, 3 bills the next session. It did a couple things. One is we got a lot of meaningful bills passed, okay? It also elevated me in the eyes of those legislators that they understood at this point that I knew what I was talking about. I was somebody that had some ability to compile the research and compile what the solutions were. One act of advocacy almost always leads to more acts of advocacy. Okay, tools and resources. On our TAC website, we have what's called the TAC Action Center. I highly encourage you to go find that, visit there, and get signed up for action alerts. We do advocacy alerts when we see a bill is getting scheduled, a priority bill that is getting scheduled for a committee hearing where we know you can give testimony or a committee vote. We will send out an alert and to everybody who's on our mailing list, right? And in a simple push of a button, you can go ahead and get an email sent to all the people on that committee, or maybe just your own legislature, depending upon at what stage this bill is in your process. And we'll have a pre-filled part with the meat of the thing, but a little section where you can add your story reason why you want this to pass. And with the push of a button, you can send off a bunch of emails. It's a quick and dirty way to go ahead and be engaged, even if you can't go to your capital. I also have on there, it lists what bills we're tracking in every state across the country. And keep in mind that I'm not tracking every single bill. I'm tracking the bills that are priority bills from the viewpoint of TAC for SMI policy. Okay. But it's a place where you can go see bills that are filed in other states. Also encourage you to join the SMI Advocates of TAC Facebook group and sign up for our SMI Advisor newsletter. We've been working on that. It's about to be published in a week or two here. Again, you can see what's happening in other parts of the country, and it's a great way to get ideas for what might be good ideas to do in your own states. All right. Since I'm nearly done talking with you, I've said, hey, if you want to know this, reach out to me. Here's my email. It's lcarpenter@tac.org or lcarpenter@iamentalhealth.com. This slide is a picture that I want to share with you. This is a picture that my son drew about 2 years into his diagnosis of a schizoaffective disorder, and he was very sick. And he was being tried on a gold standard medication that works for so many people in our country so very well for schizophrenia. But for him, it was causing him horrific side effects. He was having grand mal seizures, incontinence, inability to swallow solid food. He lost about 35 pounds in a 3-month time frame. It was doing nothing for his voices. He was having night terrors, and he'd become suicidal again and was back in the hospital. A couple days later, this young woman was admitted with the same voices, and you could see them walking down the hall, covering up their ears, saying, "Shut the blank up," right? He saw her suffering. He sat down and he drew this picture. They colored it together, and the nurse told me what was going on. So I begged her to let me off the unit. I ran back to the parking structure, got my cell phone, snuck it in my pocket, and went back in and got a picture of it because I had to have it. The messages he gave her were things like peace, serenity, help, and hope. If he could do that while he was that sick, we, with our healthy brains, we can step up to help make the system work better for them.